but I think the fame went to his head. And additionally, as
Oh man, so many uncomfortable, odd jokes. I was a young man, early 20s. When I watched through this stuff back then, and I was rediscovering my love of D&D, I missed so much of this. He really does problematic things in almost every single episode he's in. Like, visibly on the cast member's face that it bothered them. Just looking at Travis and Sam in this last episode that he was in, like, their whole body language throughout the entire episode is insane. I can't unsee it anymore. Like, I can't unsee early Critical Role. How's it going, my beautiful nerds? Welcome back to another episode of Fraud on the Telly. Today, we're doing things a little bit different, as you can tell already by seeing my face. Recently, I got sent a video from a bunch of people, from another creator, awesome YouTuber named Super Geek Mike. Guy makes awesome content, nerd culture, D&D culture, things like that. Go check him out. But he made a very interesting video called Let's Talk About Tiberius. Now, I've already watched a little bit of this video, and Mike does an awesome job, probably the best job I've seen of anyone online trying to explain the whole Tiberius situation. So I thought it would be good to watch along together and we talk about it, because honestly, this is something in the Critical Role history that frankly needs to be addressed for a lot of the newer fans who are probably curious. As far as blemishes go in long-running shows and stuff like that, this is a rather small one. And rewatching some early Critical Role Campaign 1, I began to see a lot of issues and problems that I didn't watch or didn't even realize the first few times that I've seen those episodes. We'll get more into that later, but honestly, going back and watching a lot of those episodes, I was cringing so hard just seeing behavior and stuff from Orion. So with that kind of preface out of the way, I don't want any hate or anything like that towards Orion in the comments down below. This is just meant to be kind of an educational thing for newer fans, and I think we as a fan base should be able to talk about this situation without like a shitstorm brewing. So with that being said, let's get into the video.
I think ultimately not at place in Critical Role, which was that he felt the need to win. He felt the need to be the most successful or to do the most cool stuff.
Yes. That there's like so many examples of this now where I go back and I watch and I'm just like, oh yeah, like you can see it, man. You can see it. The energy that he puts out during the episodes, his desire to be the first in the group, the most vocal, the most loud, the most boisterous. It's frustrating, you know, because there's like a line there between Orion and his character Tiberius, where his character was all of those things. He was loud, he was boisterous, he was very opinionated. It's very obvious, though, that this was also Orion in a way bleeding through, in my opinion, especially in kind of his willingness and want to take the center stage. That was, I think, one of the biggest things that I took away from rewatching a lot of the early campaign is how much Tiberius dominates these scenarios. There's so many of them. There's so many examples. One of the ones that really, I think, kind of set a lot of the cast over the edge. I'm trying to remember the specifics. I think they were under Vasselheim. I think this might have been the Slayer's Take quest. I'm not sure. There's like a hole in this ceiling. I'll try to find the clip if I can. And Allura, as Vex, shoots an arrow into the hole in this ceiling. I can't remember what it was exactly for. Orion, before Matt can say anything, before the scenario can play out what she's done, Orion comes in and says, I use telekinesis on the arrow, pushing it in. And Laura, I'm pretty sure, verbally says out loud, like, can I just have this one thing? And that right there epitomizes, like, a lot of the issues that Tiberius had. And this is not something that's unique to him. This is a problem player trait. And I think a lot of Orion's issues and Tiberius's issues, not all of them, but a lot of them can be boiled down to problem player situations, basically.
Kind of go Nova in every combat that he could and use as much of the powers as he could. And this not only put him at odds with the mechanics, as he would run out of all of his cool stuff faster and need long rests more often, but it also put him at odds with the other cast members and with Matt. because he had this mentality of how to win the games, of how to win the fights, and sort of took it on himself personally to handle a lot of these things himself. Some of these can be...
That right there, I mean, I feel like if you've played D&D long enough, or role-playing games in general, you've encountered a player like that, or maybe you've heard a story of a player like that, the player that wants to win. Oftentimes they come from video games, maybe they don't have a lot of experience with roleplay, and this idea in roleplay that taking L's is like awesome. Like taking L's in roleplay is like the best thing ever. It's like it facilitates roleplay so well, but a lot of people can't wrap their minds around that. They want to win, or they want to be the smartest person in the room, or they want to, feel like the smartest person in the room.
Not trying to kill them. The monsters are trying to kill them. But Matt was not their enemy in combat. Now, this should be obvious, but I will say this is a very common mindset in D&D. A lot of D&D players have this feeling. This comes from a lot of places. It can come from...
This is what we just talked about a bit. This was definitely a problem with Orion and Tiberius. It was very obvious that he had this mindset that Matt was trying to kill them. Matt was trying to get the better of them. While Matt is a pretty tough DM, especially in those early... in that early campaign, he presented them with a lot of challenges. But that's what it is. It's challenges. That's what Matt likes to do.
As I mentioned, he had a bit of a catchphrase. Hello, I'm Tiberius Stormwind from Draconia. As the show became popular early on, a lot of bootleg or unofficial...
I didn't know about this at all. I didn't know about this at all.
Hello, I'm sticker with Tiberius Stormwind from Draconia written on it. The same way you might get hello, my name is Inigo Montoya, you killed my father, prepare to die. And I think that there's another aspect to consider with Orion is that he had another show on Geek and Sundry.
So yeah, that's a bad look. Threatening to copyright strike, when you're a newly formed brand. We have to remember that Critical Role at this time was fresh. It was a show that was... having unprecedented success for what it was. It was really a phenomenon in that first, it still is, right? But really, for real, in that first year, man, even more than the year, it was just the growth was insane. And I could see, how that's not a good look if you want to start copyright striking fan-made content. Look at me right now, fan-made content. It would be an issue, right? And I think that, that was not very obvious, whether that came from Travis or whoever. That was not the direction they wanted to go. I actually didn't know about this, really, the fan-made shirt thing. I was very into Critical Role early, but I that was completely out of my purview. I did not know about that at all.
As he did, the success of the show. However, this is, I think, also where the mentality shifts a bit. I don't know for sure, I don't know the man, but I think the fame went to his head. And additionally, as his character broadcast to fans and has fans of his own now, well, now being 2015, but...
Mike's not holding punches here, man. That Mike is not holding punches here. I think that's a fair statement. Like we said earlier, Orion Tiberius, sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the character and the actor in a lot of the things that he did, especially when it came to overshadowing other characters. I was a young man, early 20s, when I watched through this stuff back then, and I was rediscovering my love of D&D. I missed so much of this. He really does problematic things in almost every single episode he's in, whether it's perpetually trying to dominate scenes, pushing people to the side, taking people's spotlight, metagaming. The amount of metagaming this guy did was wild, which that's its whole other thing. Apparently some people claim fudge dice rolls from the guy. Obviously, I can't attest to anything like that, but I have seen a lot of people claiming some fudge dice rolls. That already is a problem thing right there. One of the biggest things, though, that really bugged me, besides just the amount of dominating that the guy did of the spotlight, was the jokes. So many uncomfortable, odd jokes. I get it, they're friends, it's banter, all that good stuff. Critical Role, it's an adult show. They mess around with each other. That's fine. We're all adults here. It's funny, plenty of funny stuff. but sometimes there's several. I don't really want to repeat several of them. I believe there was one in Tiberius's last episode where he was featured in Critical Role that was, maybe part of the straw that broke the camel's back, a little inappropriate, that he said towards Laura's character Vex, and you could tell that Travis was just had enough. Speaking of Travis and the other members of the cast, it's wild. Like I said before, I didn't even realize so much of this when I watched it early on as a fan. How much you can tell, like visibly on the cast member's face, that it bothered them. Just looking at Travis and Sam in this last episode that he was in, like their whole body language throughout the entire episode is insane, man. It's insane. I don't want to make this about shit-talking the guy or anything like that, but it's very obvious the cast seemed to feel way happier once he was gone. If you just compare body language from previous episodes to the episodes post Tiberius, but there's just so much of it that I just didn't see it, I didn't see it at the time, probably because I was just a young man who was enjoying the story being told to me, and it's so painfully obvious going back and watching it now that it's like actually wild to me.
These ideas of things to execute and no spells to represent them, so he wanted to come up with other ideas. He thought, I can do a lot of damage with a cool bladed weapon if I use telekinesis on it, so I'll commission a cool bladed weapon, and goes on this very long, rambling objective to do that, and is way more excited about it than anyone else is. This can happen in D&D games.
Oh,
with Tiberius a lot.
I remember that. I have very vivid memory of that. It was the shopping episode where he was so... Oh my goodness, I remember that, bro. I actually remember that. It's stuff like that, dude. You don't think about it at the time, especially depending on how new you were to D&D, but there's just like so much stuff that he did that's just like I'm surprised the table put up with it for that long. If it would have been just a normal game, not streamed, like he probably would have been removed way earlier.
Lot. And while every once in a while it's genuinely funny, like the time that he tries to get access to a teleportation circle and kind of ends up going through like a spectrum style tree of talking to your boss's boss and boss's boss and boss's boss, of like going to upper management, and that scene is funny, but oftentimes it didn't land that way. It was just him going on these long rambling missions of trying to perform some sort of objective, and he wouldn't necessarily tell the cast or even Matt what he was trying to build or create, and that frustrates everyone. Matt is frustrated that he can't help this player represent whatever he's trying to do because he doesn't really understand it, and they're not on the same page about what's going to be involved. Orion's frustrated he can't just do what he says he's trying to do because there's these pesky rules in the way, and he has to make these roles for them, and he feels like he should just be able to do them because he asked for it and he thought it through, and it makes sense to him. The cast isn't in the loops. They're just waiting for him to finish this side quest, this mission.
Yeah, there's a lot of very painful examples of this. I really do implore you to go back and watch some of this stuff because, man, you kind of can't unsee. I can't unsee it anymore. Like, I can't unsee early Critical Role. Honestly, I don't even know if I'll ever go back and watch that stuff pre-Briarwood arc ever again. And it's just like, you just can't unsee it once you see it.
And there were some jokes that were not taken well. I don't want to sit here and defend jokes. I don't personally think they were worth defending. The point is, the other people at the table didn't like them. They did not like these jokes. This is episode 27. This is by far one of the worst, probably the worst Tiberius episode, is episode 27. That's why I get very resistant when people say, start with episode 24 and just jump from there. I don't know about that. Maybe watch episode 24 and 25 and maybe 26 and then just skip episode 27.
It's rough, man. I didn't realize how rough that episode is. Episode 27 was a show. It's honestly impressive. Critical Role has hundreds of episodes, hours upon hours upon hours of streamed content. Live, a lot of it live, a good chunk of it live. The lack of blunders, the lack of low moments, the lack of, the constant professionalism, all of these things, you take it for granted because of how well run, put together, just everything is in that show, how much fun the cast are having together, how willing they are to, like, role play with each other and tell an awesome story. It's just not the same earlier on. You can just tell. It's crazy how this one kink in a chemistry dynamic in something as simple as Dungeons and Dragons is so, like, makes such the biggest difference, man. It really does. I can almost agree with Mike, like I was saying earlier. I don't know if I would ever tell anyone to watch before episode 27. I mean, just looking at the YouTube comments on this thing it's bad. Like, I'm genuinely surprised that a lot of these comments actually got left still up. But you can see this was not lost on the fans. It was not lost at all. It may have been lost on me because I'm oblivious and I was like 20 at the time. But like, it is not lost on the fans. They see all, man. I mean, just look at the look on Sam's face here, the look on Travis's face here. Like, they're just so done. Just so done. You can just tell. Like, Travis has had enough.
Personal things that were going on with Orion that we need to address. One was that he was struggling with cancer at the time. I believe, I don't know the specific type, but I suspect that was part of the reason why he was on the eating schedule he was. Should he have figured out a workaround? Should they have changed the time? I don't know. That is a larger conversation. That is a factor, potentially. Additionally, about, I would say, maybe a year after he left the show, maybe a little less, he put out a video where he talked a little bit about his behavior, both on screen and off.
I just want to reiterate what Mike said here, because I feel like I've been doing a lot of shit on Orion, and I don't want to do that because he's a person just like me, At the end of the day, it's just a Dungeons and Dragon games that happens to be a show. So I don't want to, cause any ill will towards the man or anything like that, because it's not like he's done anything, to my knowledge, horribly wrong or anything like that. It's just interesting to me, just how obvious, I guess, the issues were early on. And the fact that I just didn't notice them. And I'm curious to know if this happened with other fans as well, or even fans who have gone back and watched. I feel like I'm almost kind of slow out of the loop here, because like Mike said, up until very recently, I was under the impression that Orion left the game for his addiction and cancer reasons. The video that he put out, obviously those things played a role. There's no way that they didn't. And they suck. Like, that's horrible. I don't wish that on anyone, either of those things. But there was issues definitely outside of that were very pervasive to the table and the quality of the game and just these people's happiness. And it's very interesting to see where it is now, or even just where it went 5 episodes after he was gone. And you can just see the look on a lot of the cast members' face, man. It just seemed like before he left, they just weren't having fun. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a group of friends who just happen to be voice actors having fun, right? Like, that's what we came to see, right?
He would often talk about things in game terms more than he did in character terms. And he would somewhat factor in information that Orion wouldn't necessarily have access to.
We do a little bit of metagaming.
Disrespectful he was toward
this though, bro.
Of the other players.
I
talked about this a little bit already, where he sort of assumed his plan was the de facto plan unless somebody said otherwise.
Yep.
He sort of assumed he could just do whatever he wanted until somebody pointed to him and said, "Hey, what are you doing? And why are you doing it?" And then he'd be forced to explain it. And he always seemed a little bit frustrated that he had to explain his mentality.
Yeah. Those aren't even like the things that I think are that bad. Metagaming sucks. Metagaming happens. That's fine. The more pressing issues to me, which I think Mike's about to get into, and he just talked about, player agency, that's a big one, man. Like, that's a big one. It's hard to play with someone like that. For me, really, it was the jokes, inappropriate behavior, the want and clamor for the spotlight, and pushing others aside while doing so. And it's just a lot of disrespect, I think, in a role play setting. And not even just a role play setting. I think just in a friend work environment setting, there was just a lot of disrespect.
Big moments, which is that Scanlan, had an item that Orion felt that Tiberius would be able to use better. It doesn't matter whether or not he was correct. He could make a compelling argument for it, and that's what was going on in his head. He saw this item that Scanlan was not using and felt, well, I should use that because I would get more benefit from it. So he asked Scanlan to trade the item with him. I believe he asked 3 episodes in a row. The first time he asked, Sam was not present. Orion asked Scanlan, as played by Matt, if he could switch items with him. That
Weird, bro. Like, you know, it's so small. It's such a small thing in reality, but it's just like an example of a larger problem, right? Like, he felt entitled to do that. Whether that's an ego thing, like where that comes from, who knows? A lot of it, I think, has to do with his kind of video game mentality to role-playing games and role-playing in general. It seemed to me, at least, because that's a very like RPG winner's mentality. We min-max items, you know, we switch them around, all that stuff, right? Some of like an overall just issue behavior problem in general that he had.
other thing that I really did not talk about was that Orion had a subplot where he was kind of romancing Allura.
Oh my god. I almost forgot about this, bro. Holy.
Interest.
Another example of some cringe moments, man, that happened in campaign 1. There was some cringe Tiberius Allura moments or it just felt like the guy just didn't take the hint.
But also, their first adventure, they go and they rescue Lady Kima from the dungeons in the Underdark, and they bring her back to Allura, and there is a definite implication that the two of them have at least a romantic history or romantic interest in each other. And Orion got really butthurt about this. Like, he felt like he had, I guess I lost my chance. And he, pounded the table and went, really, Matthew? I'm not going to show the clip, but it's weird and gross.
Wait, well, really? There's no, I don't remember that at all.
You get this big kind of embracing bear hug. She lifts Kima up, and there's like a slow spin. You can see this kind of very, very strong bond of friendship before she eventually puts Kima down and takes the big. She holds her hands for a second. You can see a tear kind of running down Allura's cheek, and she goes, I was so worried about you. And Kima kind of sheepishly turns her eyes to the side. It's like, oh, I'm sorry for all the trouble.
Story of my life.
No! Oh no!
Seriously, Matthew? Come on! What? They're good friends!
Friends. Look, mate.
Your assumptions,
Don't-
Dragon Ball.
Oh! Look, mate,
I get it now.
don't mug yourself.
Yes.
Don't mug yourself, mate.
Oh, that's great.
Don't mug yourself.
Because there is a level of entitlement present there. There's a feeling that there is a expectation that he was going to get the girl. And Matt says, what? They're friends. But Orion is still annoyed because, I guess the girl I like is gay. Now, while I think that behavior was a form of homophobia, I'm not here saying that Orion was homophobic. But what he was
That escalated.
very entitled to a romantic subplot.
Yeah.
And the moment
A little weird.
that he felt like it wasn't going to happen, he got very pissy about it. That is some gross dude bro entitlement right there.
It's pretty weird.
Now in later episodes,
It's pretty weird. That's more of an example of stuff that bothered me with Orion. It's very I mean, how many times have I said it now at this point? It's very obvious that the cast got fed up with his antics. You know what I mean? And to be fair, they played with him for a long time. What, 27 episodes, 28 episodes, something like that? An episode per week? Sometimes they take weeks off. That's, 28 weeks potentially, right? That's a long time. That's a long time. It's obvious that they had tried to work some stuff out. I know Matt would have talked to him. It just didn't work for whatever reason, which is unfortunate. But that's just going to happen sometimes in role-playing games where a large portion of it comes down to chemistry and respect. It's hard to know exactly what happened here. It seemed like a bit of a perfect storm almost, where the combination of the sudden rise of Critical Role with, I think, just some inherent problems it seems Orion was going through, and Obviously, his relationship with role-playing games was vastly different from everyone else at the table, just inapparent in how his behavior is.
Anyway, that's the Tiberius situation. And for those who are curious, for those who want sort of a comprehensive look at how it all went down and what we know, there are a lot of people who still sort of wonder what happened and what behind the scenes.
Still, like, a lot of
breaking
speculation,
points.
man.
While I have my guesses.
Yeah.
You can kind of see in that last episode that Travis is pretty fed up with it, and I would suspect he spoke for the group in that moment.
So yeah, that was that. A very in-depth, comprehensive look at Orion and Tiberius Stormwind in early Critical Role, and just kind of everything that happened. This subject is really weird in the Critical Role community. Like we stated earlier, people just like don't really talk about it a lot. Probably because maybe out of respect, but also like I think it comes down from the top. Critical Role as a brand is very anti-drama, anti-confrontation, which I completely understand because they want to make money. They want to have a brand that is not a brand risk in any way, and they want to promote positivity. I get all of those things. It makes complete sense from their side. However, it does create an issue where it feels like this whole thing was just this small little footnote in what has been this big, now huge, massive thing that is Critical Role, and there was no real answer on it. The only thing I can really, the only thing it really feels like, which is a very niche thing, that some people may not understand my reference here, it's like when someone gets banned off Twitch. Twitch does not have to say the reason why they're banned or removed, so it just creates speculation. That's what happened here. He was just gone. Statements were made, very milquetoast, differences in creative vision, or like, we wish you well on your future endeavors. The video that Orion put out is no longer there. Like Mike said, it's gone. I definitely remember watching that, though, back in the day. So it's kind of just this thing, the elephant in the room that I think a lot of people don't want to talk about. Maybe they're afraid to talk about, and I get that. I don't want to seem like I'm dragging the guy through the mud, even though this whole thing is, kind of just shit on him, isn't it? But I do think that it needs to be talked about, especially considering how big Critical Role is now, how many fans that it has, how many new fans it constantly has, and the amount of fans that I can imagine probably haven't even watched those Tiberius episodes. And so I think that this and what Mike's done here has given a lot of context to this question. A lot of it is speculation, but I think it's very good speculation. A lot of it can be backed up just by watching these early episodes. I think we can learn a lot as people and role players from this whole Tiberius situation. It really does just blow my mind how much of this I missed at the time. I mean, honestly, if you go to most of those early Geek and Sundry episodes, especially episodes like 20 to 27, and you read the comments, just read the comments. They're still up now. Obviously, YouTube comments are a cesspool, but you can see the effect that Tiberius had was not lost on the audience, even at the time in the last few years. I highly, highly suggest going back and watching some of these moments from early Critical Role after having seen this video, Mike's video, because it definitely changes it. It does, for real. 27 is almost like the Blacklist episode, like the episode that everyone wants to forget. Obviously, go check Mike's channels out, watch his whole video, as we only kind of put segments of it on here. I think he did a really good job of being objective, laying out the facts, and just kind of letting them speak for themselves in a very respectful manner, because I understand that this is a very touchy subject for a lot of people, especially in the Critical Role community. But I hate how it feels like we're not supposed to talk about this. It really bothers me. As always, if you enjoyed the video or learned something new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about this new kind of video format and seeing my lovely face. As always, make sure you go check out some of our other Critical Role and Legend of Vox Machina content. I hope to see you all in the next video. Stay safe out there. As always, guys, peace, love, adieu.